Greetings, gamers, and welcome to the 95th live stream from the Misfit Gamers Studios. I'm your host, Vortex, and this is D&D Discussions. On today's episode of Deeper Discussions, we are going to be looking at the history of the spell Simulacrum. We're going to be going through each version from 1st edition all the way to 5th edition, looking at whatever small, minute changes they did. I was kind of hoping that this was one of those spells that was going to evolve a lot over time, but aside from a few key features that adjusted a little bit here and there, it was more about I found out that it was more about the lore and the description of the spell that changed more than the actual characteristics of it. So we're going to be getting into that, and I don't think we have any other updates. So yeah, we're pretty much just going to get right into it. Yeah, so let me get Kage in here. What's up, man? How you doing? How was your week?
Shalom, shalom, my friends. It's good. It's good. I've been working and doing some construction lately, and so
good to get outside.
Yeah,
good to get outside, except for the heat wave.
Yes. Oh my gosh, there was one day this week that was so much worse. I feel like we were in like 120. Like it wasn't that bad, but it felt that bad.
Yeah.
I was like, this is ridiculous. Whatever.
Well, it's terrible, especially if you're working indoors for anything. I mean, I did HVAC for a while, so doing that during the summer was just absolutely brutal. So glad brutal. I don't do that anymore.
Right?
I mean, I don't get me wrong. I miss the physical part. I do miss being physical every day. But I don't miss killing myself every day.
That is a huge plus. I will say I've actually been, I don't want to say getting into shape, but I've been revitalizing some energy that I didn't realize I still had. So from sitting around just looking at my computer all day.
Yeah, it is nice to get out there and just start moving again. So. That's good. That's good. I don't think we have any updates right now in terms of anything new that's happening. I'm still going back through all of the old episodes.
Yeah,
so
I'm very excited to see what that looks like. I feel like I know you and I talked a little bit before stream about how much content, how many clips that you've seen in a lot of the earlier episodes, but. For whatever reason, I genuinely feel like in the later episodes, it's gonna start escalating.
I really hope so. I think it's funny to go back because the first thing I've noticed, just because I've only gone through the first like half dozen episodes right now. And I listen to them on 1.75 just so I can get through the episodes because I don't need to. I'm not sitting there trying to learn from them right now. It's more of I just want to listen to the content and find out those little snippets that I want to like grab or things I want to remember or in general, just also to remind myself I don't have the greatest working memory. So it's always nice to just kind of refresh on things we've talked about, listen to what we've said. But the biggest thing outside of just how well we've progressed in terms of interacting with our audience, in terms of the quality of the equipment and just the quality of us and how we've gone from our more or less just random conversations and tangents into our more structured conversations and tangents.
Right.
Big Dungeon Energy, what is up? Glad to see you here. I hope you are ready for today's topic.
Shalom, welcome.
But yeah, I've noticed I keep saying this, but the biggest thing I've noticed is how often we don't necessarily repeat ourselves, but how often we reiterate the same thing. So it's interesting that I'll remember the last couple weeks of streams, or we'll just get done with the stream, and then I'll have watched that, watching that old episode. I'll listen almost verbatim to us say the same thing, and it's so weird to just have heard me or you say something in those first couple episodes that we're still saying to this day.
It's because it's consistency.
I absolutely love it. It's so nice to just because it's that whole validation aspect of you're like, hey, okay, so I do have like I do know what I'm talking about. Like I do like remember the things that I'm talking about. But it's also just really great because for the evolution of the stream and the things that we talk about, it is just also just really eerie that we're not necessarily recalling that information, but we say it almost the same way each time. It's almost just like mantras and mottos that are coming out. So it's really cool. I'm super stoked.
I like it.
It is. I don't want to say it's cringe. I think maybe in a couple years it might be cringe to look back on the first episodes. Obviously, because we'll be completely different. But I'm definitely appreciating where we're going, and I'm so much more appreciative of where we are now. Me as a host, as a speaker, as a streamer, us as just a duo, and everything, in total. Just watching the first couple episodes, it's just, I'm appreciating where we're at. I'm appreciating where we're going. We have a long way to go still. I'm in no way do I think that we've made leaps and bounds, but we haven't gone miles yet. You know what I mean?
For sure.
But it's so great to just look back and be like, man, we're so much better now. You know what I mean?
I like it.
I also would say this too, not trying to like toot my own horn, but I think one thing I do also appreciate is one of the things I always wanted, like, I think a lot of content creators and streamers, I think their goal is that they want to create content that they would like, right? Like some content creators just want to make, cash. They'll just do anything that's popular. But I think there's a lot of genuine creators out there that go into it with the mindset of, I would like to create something that I would like to watch. And I will say that with every episode I've gone through just on in the background, even at 1.75, it's just kind of chill, like for myself, not trying to like, again, ego or anything, but just listening to us chat in the background is actually pretty chill. And I got to say, that's exactly kind of like what I wanted. I didn't
say that because that's exactly what Big Dungeon Energy is using us for right now.
Oh, what's that? Just hanging out listening to while I work prep for my game tomorrow. That's fantastic.
Isn't it though?
But yeah, no, because I knew that I had goals in what I wanted to do, and I knew that I wasn't going to be a skit creator. I wasn't going to be like a comedy thing, right? Like I knew I wasn't going to be that. I knew I wasn't going to be a great commentator on like the IRL, aspects of the world. I wasn't going to be that kind of entertainer, but I also didn't want to be the boring one that was just white noise. Right. I didn't want to be the one that you put on just because it's you have a nice sounding voice, right? Because at first that's kind of why I got into book narration and why I built the studio originally was because I was like, okay, that would be kind of a cool little passive thing to do just because, I've been told that my voice is nice sometimes. So I'm like, okay, if I could just be that white noise, like an audio book, right. Someone's listening to like a presentation, because I did like a lot of business ones, right? I didn't do anything like, cool. I didn't do characters or any like novels, but the ones that I was doing was like, test preps and more, again, more things that you just need a voice that's consistent and listenable. So that was really interesting. But when I went into this, I was like, I don't want to be just that white noise that people put on, but I'm not going to be that in your face, super active, skit creating kind of streamer.
You're not going to be the throwing it back paladin?
Yeah, exactly. You know what I'm talking about. So the thing with that is like, I had to figure out where did I want to be in the middle of that, right? I didn't want to just be a podcast, but I also knew I wanted the stream to be able to do that. Like, be able to reproduce this and put it out as a podcast and it not lose much. Like, we're going to have visuals, but, for the most part, I think anybody could just listen to this while they're driving or anything else like that. But, yeah, I wanted to find that blend of actually being engaging with the content of D&D and engaging with the audience as a streamer is. But I also wanted to blend that like good in the background, but still able to pay attention. Right. That's again, I don't know what I'm doing to get that, but I feel like when I've listened to my content back, I feel like I've accomplished that to some degree.
An energy that like, okay, so here's the deal. When I bowl, I know this is a very weird segue, but like when I bowl, it's one of those things where I don't exactly know what I'm doing, but at the same time I know what I'm doing because I felt my body do it enough that it just flows out. I feel like weirdly like this is like a social version of that. It's just like you've heard it enough, you've experienced it enough, and you kind of know what it is that you're looking for and you're trying to be. And so,
it's I couldn't say I'm trying to emulate this person or I'm trying to speak like this. But yeah, you're absolutely right. There's an understanding of cadence. There's an understanding of enunciation, because I don't think we are much different on stream than we are, as soon as we leave stream and walk out of the studio.
That's fair.
But there is some consideration, right? Stuttering, the ums, the uhs, how I breathe before I speak to not do the breathy kind of like static or anything. Taking a deep breath before I do a sentence instead of just doing the, cutting in and out like you would normally do in a conversation. So there's just a lot of things that I'm like, I'm sure somewhere in my mind, all of that's being
Processed.
accounted for.
Yeah.
But I couldn't say, like, what I mean by that is, like, I listen to myself and go, I'm accomplishing what I wanted. But I'm not specifically going into this saying, these are the things I'm doing to accomplish that.
Right.
I just feel like that was my goal. And now that I'm listening to us, I feel like I got to that point to where it's like, hey, I'm not just white noise in the background. I can absolutely do my job and do my work and still pay attention to what I'm saying. So I'm not just white noise, but there's not so much going on that I can't keep up, right? It's I'm just able to listen, process what's being said, and I think that has to just do, again, with cadence, enunciation, and our choice of just how you and I discuss things, how we describe the world around us. I think just that also has a lot to do with it. We don't get too technical or, too crazy with our descriptions, but we also don't try to keep everything kindergarten level either.
Right.
So it's like there's that aspect. I think you can keep the brain. We keep the brain working just enough to pay attention, but it's not enough to distract you from whatever else it is that you're doing.
Yeah.
And I think that's, again, I'm trying to put into words what I don't actually know.
I get you.
I'm just trying to understand what I see. Because again, I can't tell other people. I can't tell, like, Big Dungeon or Helepa, what's up? How you doing? I can't tell them why they like listening to us. I can't tell them why they log in. But I know when I'm listening back what's drawing me in, right? It's it's not the simplicity of what we're saying, but it's the ease of being able to pay attention while not being distracted, if that makes sense. That's the easiest way I can put it. And I think that's the vibe I was always hoping for, is, again, being able to just be that go-to. I don't need to watch you, but I am paying attention from across the room.
Very fair. Very fair.
So, that's just, I don't know. I don't know. I would really like to know, like, what you guys think. Like, you guys comment either in chat or on YouTube. I'm just really curious if what you guys listen to us for. Actually, that would be great. Just comment on YouTube or in Discord, wherever you guys contact us, and let us know, what do you guys listen to us for? Are we white noise? Are we background? In that case, we probably won't hear from you because you have no idea what we're talking about. Are you paying attention? Are you doing something and we're just there and you're able to pay attention but not get distracted, right? Or are we your stream? Like, do you actually log in to watch us? I can't. That's the one thing that I struggle with, right? Like, I want to make good YouTube content, but I also realize that, again, because we're not that in your face kind of, interactive,
Right.
We don't do the scripts and we don't do the skits or anything. It's going to be a little bit harder to sell that kind of content, right? That's going to have to be people who either really like what we're saying or just really like us and our personality. You know what I mean? Like, once we get to YouTube, we're going to have to lean on that a lot more, just because we're not going to have a lot of crazy editing right out the gate, right? It's going to be just a lot more about the content. But that's the thing. I've never really envisioned this as, like, I don't know if I envision this as something people would actually log in to do just this. Like, I don't know if we're that kind of a stream where people would just log in just to watch us. I think I'd be fine and happy if we were just always the background stream. Like, I think I could live with that. I would totally live with that.
At all.
I just don't know. You know what I mean? And maybe that's just my lack of confidence right now. I mean, just because we're so small. But yeah, it is that idea of, I don't know if we offer enough to be someone's main thing, unless we're reviewing their item. Then I can understand having their full attention.
Fair.
You know what I mean?
Fair.
Like, I could totally understand them wanting to actually listen if we're talking about their stuff. So, I don't know. Maybe I'm totally off. Maybe I'm not. These are just my shower thoughts over the last year of doing this. 95 episodes. Absolutely insane.
We are so close to 100. 5 to go.
BDE says, learning so much. I'm glad that you learned from us. That is kind of, I've never wanted to come across as someone who knows better, but I always like to share what I do know, or at least what I do research.
Right.
I never try to speak out of turn in terms of, like, if I haven't actually read it recently, I'm gonna let you know this is the best of my knowledge.
Yep.
But yeah, no, I'm glad that we're covering subjects that people like to listen to and like to learn. Right. That's one of the things that I love about doing this stream, is that first, I was worried about having to come up with topics, because I always thought it was going to have to be unique and crazy topics, and, like, again, what you see on YouTube, like pushing the boundaries of, like, creating new stuff. And then I realized that there are people who are going and looking at things like we do. There are plenty of people doing homebrew. There are plenty of people looking at different rule sets. But a full history breakdown of just random things like this, I kind of feel is like one of those niche areas that not everybody is doing. Like they'll do a video on it, but breaking it down like this, I think is a lot more fun because it's not just the facts, right? It's not just us going, hey, here's what it is, here's how you use it. Because I think that's the main approach when people do the histories or the deep dives on specific topics. They're trying to like basically spell it out as it's intended. And I kind of like what we do where we look at the history, but we try to figure out what the intent was for each of the versions. And then we also try to figure out how we would apply it, right? Instead of just saying, here's how it's meant to be used, here's how you're supposed to use it. We do that. We go, here's what the spell says. Here's what it's implying it's used for.
The raw rules written, for sure.
But then we're like, but how would we use it in our setting to make it make sense, right? Like, and that, I think, again, what you do with D&D, how do things visualize? How do things manifest in order for them to actually be used? And I think that's my favorite part is I like learning. I like going through all the stuff, but I really like challenging myself because like we've talked about, our games are so dynamic that unless we've planned for it to happen, there's so many things that we're not even sure what would happen in our realm because we haven't gotten to do that yet. Like Simulacrum hasn't come up in High Point yet. So the reason why I get excited about stuff like this is I know all about High Point, but have I specifically sat down and looked at every single spell and how every spell will operate? No. I'm going to wait till
opportunity to do this one.
Exactly, right? And that's kind of like that's what I'm most excited about is looking into that and then seeing what we come up with in terms of how it gets implemented.
I'm here for it.
Cuz again, it's one thing to listen to someone tell me how the spell is supposed to be used, but I want to see it in situ. Like, and instead of sitting there playing the game and then using the spell, I like kind of what we do where we workshop. What does this look like? Who's using it? When's how would you break it? How would or as a DM, how would I worry a player is going to break it? How do you go against that? That's the most fun that I have in all of this. So I'm glad that people out there are learning or at least coming up with their own ideas. Those are two of the biggest things that we always wanted from this. Dungeon also says that we are easy to understand and good to listen to, or easy to understand and easy to listen to. So I'm happy for that one as well.
Chill.
Let's see. Okay, so yeah, I think that's a good little bit of an intro there. We got good vibes going. Very niche vibe. Yeah, I like that. Very niche vibe.
Right. Hard to acquire, but I'm here for it.
Hey, you know what? I fully understand that the hardest part is actually getting us, getting our name out there and getting people like to, figure out who we are and what we are. So that's why I'm like not that worried that we're a year in, still haven't made affiliate, but we are close, and I'm happy about that because the growth is consistent, and consistency is key, like we always say.
Consistency is key.
But I guess we can start. So today we are going to be going and doing a deeper dive into the history of Simulacrum, the spell that has basically persisted through pretty much all versions of D&D in some form or another. Now, prior to first edition D&D,
one of the most famous spells I know of.
Exactly, yeah, and it's basically one of the oldest. I was having because of my limited resources, I had a very difficult time finding anything prior to Advanced Dungeons and Dragons First Edition. So that's where we're going to start. Okay. I do know Simulacrum had a version prior to this. I do know original D&D did have Simulacrum in some respect, but I could not find the reference book for the life of me or anyone specifically talking about what the original text was. So we're going to be starting from first edition, and basically we're just going to look at each one. We're going to read through it. We're going to look at kind of some of the key differences, try to infer, basically the lore behind it. We do know who created it, so we do have a little bit of lore of who created it, but very little about why.
Okay.
It was just more of they wanted to do something, so we'll get into that.
Maybe just to see if they could.
Exactly. But when I was researching this, like I mentioned in the intro, the one thing I did notice is it seems that the one thing that changed the most was the description of it. as in just how fleshed out the idea of what this spell was doing. That changed more than what the spell did, if that makes sense.
Okay,
So,
interesting.
I think that's where we're going to get most of our information. But yeah, we have a couple different references that we're going to do, and then we're just going to see where this topic takes us, like always. Big Dungeon Energy. Wow. Big Dungeon Energy says TikTok is where I got a lot of mine. Made a few TikToks, and now I have a bunch of people following me. It helped me hit affiliate. So that is what I'm hoping by the end of this month. So either probably not this weekend because I got to do a little bit more research. I basically got to re-listen to a lot more episodes. But I'm hoping by next weekend I will probably get Adobe Premiere and start working on my first shorts. Because once I have, I don't know, maybe like half a dozen, I'll probably end up making a TikTok account because I don't have an Instagram account, probably won't, just because there's really nothing, there's no growth there, and I'm not at the stage where I'm going to be posting about like real life stuff. So Instagram's probably not going to happen. Probably do TikTok and YouTube shorts to start out with, just to get some sort of following. So yeah, we'll probably be doing that hopefully in the next month or two. We'll be launching those. And yeah, that... We'll see. I already have a couple shorts in mind to kind of start it, but I don't know if I'm creative enough like that. That's the problem. I know what I could pinpoint and be like, hey, this information during this 5 minutes is really good. I like how I said all of this, but how to actually chomp that down into like an actual minute of digestible information. That's where I'm probably going to need an editor. But I'm going to do it myself first because I got to try. I got to try to figure out what I want, or at least figure out what the challenges are before I just hire some rando to just do it. Because if I don't even know what it even looks like, I could literally hire someone who knows no better than me and be wasting my money, right?
That's very fair.
That's what I got to figure out, is like I at least have to get some basis of knowledge so I can figure out what is a good reference point.
Fair.
So, the history of Simulacrum starts with an archwizard.
Archwizard?
Yeah, so unfortunately, we have no pictures of said archwizard. I probably won't show my screen the whole time just because we don't really need it, but we have no said pictures of Shiver. Or, yeah, I say Shiver. Or Shiver.
Shiver, I like Shiver.
Yeah, Shiver I think is pretty much what I would assume that's pronounced. But yes, so we have Shiver from the ripe old Forgotten Realms, way back in, I forgot what DR stands for. I've never really liked their the chronicles and the history was always so difficult for me to follow, like the year system, the DR system, and all of that. It's too much. Anyway, but yes. So it all starts with Shiver, an archwizard of the Netherverse, was a human, and basically was obsessed with knowledge, obsessed with new things, obsessed with just learning and creating. And one of let's see. So he established an enclave in the Netherverse when he was 39, and basically from there, his interest in learning shifted from learning to spell creation. So interested in spell creation, and he was the one that developed Contact Outer Plane and Simulacrum.
Interesting.
11 years apart. So he created the spell Contact Other Plane, and then 11 years later he created this spell Simulacrum. So basically just out of desire of new knowledge and the desire to create and just mess with magic. So
I like this.
And this is what I'm, this is why, we've talked about this before when I kind of talk about like my version of things like what spells are, how they work and how they operate, and the idea, when I talk about like Raw with lore, and the idea behind why I have such strong beliefs about like high level spells, right? Like 9th level spells, 8th level spells, why I, have like my stronger beliefs in how they are represented, in terms of it's not just a amount of power that's being unleashed, but it's and it's an amount of effort that also has to be done in terms of like time, effort, ability. There's a lot of things. It's more to me, you know, that why I have that strong ability of why the stronger spells are more than just more magic.
Right.
And it's things like this, right? Just like little tidbits again, because it's hard again without working memory. It's hard to pull in all of the reasons,
Yes.
especially over 10 years of gathering it. But like little things like this, where he created this after 39 years old. He's created an enclave in the Netherverse, so he's well advanced, well adventured, very powerful, able to survive in another area. Creates a spell, Contact Other Plane, which is already what is this? The divination ritual, able to contact other to another powerful mind from another plane, but I don't know what. 5th level. So his first. This one is a 5th level spell, right?
Okay.
It took him from this point. Took him 11 years.
To
Now,
reach a 9th
now,
level
granted, we're not saying that he took all 11 years. There's no real
Right.
definition, but you have to think if spells were that easy to create, and he was just coming up with these spells, the idea and the method that he took was any time amount of 11 years, right? And he didn't create a lot of them, right? Because most, like they're like, Mordekainen probably has a dozen spells that most people could list. Maybe a few more in the history books, but relatively speaking, for someone's lifetime, a dozen would be a very grand amount, right? Like it's one of those things because you meticulously go after. So these are just the reasons that I've taken from the older lore.
Yes.
Because I just look at that as like 11 years to me indicates that there was probably a couple years of lull. Like I'm not making anything, but the rest of it is coming up with the idea, figuring out how you would even get there, reverse engineering it, and then again making it reproducible. So that's where I kind of get my ideas of if you're going from this, these points of view. I would expect it to be a lot, right?
There's a lot more to be said. That's the distance between those two spells, but I very much think that it's likely that in pursuit of Simulacrum or pursuit of whatever goal he's after, he would likely have created a lot of other spells, maybe spells that didn't quite do what he wanted to do. Or
there's going to be a lot of failed spells because, like I said, there's always that idea of
other
reproducibility.
stuff in there. But also, when you look at somebody like Mordekainen or Tasha, or who has a lot more popular spells, a lot of the times some of these people, they actually want to create spells for people to use. Like that's kind of what they're doing. And I think, like you said, for him, a lot of what he's doing is he's not necessarily out to create spells for people. He just wants knowledge. He just wants to know what's possible. So he's out here looking, researching, discovering. He doesn't care how long between times it is. If he's got a big idea, he's going to go after that big idea.
Yeah.
But if these other guys are maybe want to be more like I don't want to say like a magician, but like kind of like somebody who's more popular, who's more famous, who's more well known for their spells,
But even
like the Walmart of.
But again, even those spells were very large amount of years apart. Like most of those spells were decades of their life in the making, and some of them were tandem, right? Some of them were being worked on simultaneous. But again, just trying to throw in some like background lore because I mentioned things like that where I mention why I take such strong stances with, and that's why I like second edition, right? I do very much get a lot of my when I say I base it in second edition, not just the second edition rule books, but it's also because even the fundamentals of how I created High Point, like with the crystal sphere and everything, is a lot of Forgotten Realms. Like Forgotten Realms is probably the mainstay of the D&D knowledge that I actually have too. So it's nice when things like this pop up because then I can point back to it and be like, oh yeah, there's an example that I couldn't have told you guys before,
right?
About why I have certain things. Actually, that would be a cool video. Being able to pull in like why I have a certain idea, and then through all the times I find the examples, putting it, like figuring it out, putting them together, so I could be like, yeah, this is why I have this idea. Here's all of the examples I've ever said, because I'm never, I can't remember them all. So
facts.
But yeah, so he so yeah. I guess also what's kind of funny about him is after he created Simulacrum, he ended up getting an obsession with that acquiring knowledge. So he kept using his spell Contact Other Plane to contact other extraplanar beings.
To figure out how to do stuff.
And eventually went mad and threw himself into the sphere of annihilation.
Well,
So yeah, fun times when you when
right.
you get
when you get a little too obsessed, a little too crazy.
yeah, when you don't want to know something, sometimes you can go too far. Jeez, yeah. And for those who don't know, we can go to the Sphere of Annihilation was a magic item that consumed everything it touched, but could be somewhat controlled mentally. So it was so the object was actually a void in the fabric of the multiverse and was utterly black, such that no amount of light could penetrate it or reflect off of it. The sphere was 2 feet in diameter and remained motionless, hovering in position until acted upon by a mental push of a sentient being. It essentially destroyed whatever it touched. Some describe it as being sucked into the void with no chance of resistance or recovery, even by a wish spell or similar magic. So, like, you go gone.
So is this like even the gods can't pull you out of this?
I don't know. It depends on if you decide that wish and divine powers are intertwined.
Mm-hmm.
So the sphere was considered a minor artifact by some, and there was evidence by the immunity that other artifacts seem to have against being drawn into the void. There are also reports of beings who survived coming in contact with the sphere, but they suffered grievous wounds as if struck by a tremendous force. And finally, divine intervention was a possible path to restoration from annihilation.
Okay.
But getting the attention of a deity to ask a boon was generally fraught with risk. So
Okay.
that's really interesting. So it's a legendary level. Interesting. So in 3rd edition, this actually became a spell. So
Really?
in first basic, yeah. So it was a wondrous item. In 1st edition, it was 30,000 GP value. 2nd edition, 30,000 GP value. 3rd edition, it became a spell. It was a strong transmutation, but the caster level had to be 20. 4th edition statistics, the level was 29, and 5th edition, it looks like it went back to a legendary rarity. So what's really interesting about this is I think about this, right? And this is kind of where, if this is an artifact and this thing is a sphere of annihilation, it's the void. It is a rip in the fabric of everything. Sounds an awful lot like the Cataclysm.
I mean,
and so it's almost like I kind of wonder, should this, like, does this exist in High Point as like a remnant of that Cataclysm, just like a piece that's isolated?
Would it be theoretically possible? Because again, the tear happened throughout all of time and whatever, and so would it be theoretically possible if you get sucked into this that you could get sucked into the Cataclysm, so to speak?
Like that would be interesting.
Maybe you go to that point, that meeting.
Well, because it would be because the whole idea was that. Let's see. I'd have to think on this because I haven't thought about the Sphere of Annihilation like that before. Now that I've actually like read it all out aloud again, so I will have to think on this and think how this would fit and what it actually means, because there is a way that I could spin this lore to not be a piece of the Cataclysm, because then that would be basically I would have to lock this thing completely away if it were truly part of the Cataclysm, because that would be far too dangerous for Zenith to ever allow to not be, contained, because that was literally like the end of the universe for everything. So if that existed, it'd kind of be hard to mention that. However, in my lore, I did tie my Cataclysm to a couple of events of actual D&D lore, and one of them was the what's the name of it? What was the name of it? So the elemental plane of chaos that fell into... No, Limbo. Limbo fell into elemental chaos, and Limbo was lost to the to elemental chaos, if I remember correctly. Yes, Limbo was lost during the spell plague and may have fallen into elemental chaos. So what I could do is, because that's part of my lore, is the cataclysm caused that to happen due to it basically making everything touch, and that was too weak of a connection. So when we fixed it, that's what happened. So, because that was also part of, the cataclysm was also what essentially caused the spell plague kind of thing. Like,
Right.
It was all of it in tandem. So with that, what I could do in High Point is make the Sphere of Annihilation a remnant of the loss of Limbo. Basically, when those touched and annihilated, this is what was left over. Because this is a tear in the multiverse, so it's not necessarily a tear in the fabric of everything like the Cataclysm was.
Right.
But this could essentially be the remnant of what used to be Limbo. This could be the final remnant of that chaotic... Because it says... Because again, this is what I love to do, is this is the seeds they planted. Limbo was lost during the spell plague and may have fallen into elemental chaos. So what if, for High Point, the Cataclysm caused a weakening to where that was the weakest of all of the barriers that the Cataclysm caused? Limbo was almost lost completely within elemental chaos, but due to the Cataclysm, it basically turned into the Sphere of Annihilation. So the Sphere of Annihilation is essentially, instead of it just being lost to elemental chaos, the entire thing basically got wrapped up into the Sphere of Annihilation. So it's essentially the Sphere of Annihilation is the hole that Limbo left when it was consumed by elemental chaos.
I mean, because there's
it's literally a vacuum,
scar,
right? It's like a vacuum, like a vacuum of power. So if Limbo was lost, the universe had a balance. So what replaced it? Well, if nothing replaced it, I could say that the Sphere of Annihilation is basically the wound. It is the gaping hole that was left by the lack of Limbo.
Interesting.
And it makes it safer than connecting to the Cataclysm, because then it would do exactly what it said. It would basically tear you apart, because essentially what the Sphere of Annihilation would be is a representation of... I mean, you can't really physically manifest it, but the idea of where planes connect, like that area that's not really a line, but it's just how planes have layers. You can go from one plane to the next, but there's always some sort of barrier between them.
Right.
You could almost say that when this destroys you, right, when you go into it and you get ripped apart, it's because even though there's no Limbo there, this is that space between Limbo and elemental chaos that broke, that allowed Limbo to leave. So it's almost like you get ripped permanently between the planes of existence. So instead of being ripped and torn and tossed into them, it's like a forever being ripped apart between them. Because that's where the hole is, right? Limbo's gone, and the only thing left was the barrier between Limbo and elemental chaos. That barrier was weakened by the Cataclysm. That's when Limbo fell in and got lost. So what's left is the barrier, but the barrier has nothing between it, right? It's it was the piece in the middle of the sandwich, but now it's an open face sandwich. So now you're just literally falling one way into an infinite dispersal because there's nothing to balance you out. I know it sounds weird. That's how High Point works, but
I get you.
I'm thinking this is actually a good lore for High Point. I think the Sphere of Annihilation will be an artifact, as it is in second edition. It'll be an artifact that exists in High Point somewhere, and it is the scar that was Limbo.
Fire.
I like this.
That's kind of fire.
So now you guys have seen live how
the creation of
how High Point develops, right? Over the last 10 years, this is how it happens, because you can't think of absolutely everything, right?
For sure.
And I've run into people who have good stories, but they lack something, or they've had hiccups along the way, and in talking with them, I have known people to where they have the fixes, they have the ideas, they have the things that would fill it out, but they're so stuck on what they've already created that it's almost like they only create linearly, in one. So it's if they've created a bunch of stuff and then they've moved on from that, they're like, well, I already created that, so it's done, right? It's almost like the idea of going back to it or adding to it or changing what they've already created is not. This isn't a lot of people, but I've met people who are changing what they've already created and what they've already decided on is something that either just they won't acknowledge or they won't entertain the idea of. And so it's like sometimes it'll just be like they're struggling to explain how some things work because they don't want to go back and like fundamentally change like something in history. But that's kind of something that I find is a benefit to High Point, right? Is if I haven't used the Sphere of Annihilation yet, it's not like I'm changing anything, right? Dov's game isn't going to change. The only thing that's going to change is you now have a more enriched environment that you have one more thing now to go and explore.
Right. Exactly.
So that's kind of just how what I you know why I like doing it this way is when I have a new idea, I can backdate that, and now that I know that this exists and it always has existed, instead of changing what I've already written about the lore, right? We know the 3 great wars of High Point that that shaped it to what it is today. None of that has to change. But like I've said before, I've left areas that are gray and blacked out because I know how the outcome is, but I may not have gotten to the point to where I've sat down and figured out every last thing, right?
Right.
Now that I've created this, the next time I think about the great, like the first, can you imagine the first Great War? Now that this exists, there's going to be so many battles, so many people that I can now finish their stories, right? I can now be like, oh, I had this NPC who he had a secret weapon, but I haven't figured out what it was yet.
Boom.
Boom. Sphere of Annihilation. He was in control of it. And the outcome now makes more sense with this than with a spell, right? And that's what's probably going to end up happening is as I think on this and as I've added this to High Point now, the longer I think of it, the more it's going to fill in the gaps that I have and I left for myself. So it's not going to change history. It's just going to enrich it. It's just going to add the detail that I don't already have. So yeah, live here today, you've seen High Point grow. Big Dungeon Energy says, I pull from all over, just got an idea from Rogue One. That's fantastic. Yeah.
Very nice.
And that's the thing too, is you got to keep pulling in ideas. And I think I said this very early on in one of my, one of the first episodes that I rewatched. One of the reasons why I'm so for people using pop culture is because as much as it's, as much as you can say that, it's not very creative or it's not unique or original, there is something to be said for, but it's accessible knowledge, right? If you're really a fan of it, you know a lot about it, and it's going to be easy knowledge for you to grasp and to utilize than it is to create something that you have to now memorize from scratch.
Exactly.
Or constantly reference, right? So one of the things I love, I know so much about Doctor Who and Supernatural and the Dresden Files, right? So it's easier for me to base my rules around those things that I'm much more familiar with than create from scratch or, again, from a book that I may not own. Or that, you know what I mean? Like, it's so much easier to be consistent when it's something that I'm hyped about and that I have all of the knowledge already for.
Right.
So
reinventing the wheel, as Dungeon Energy says.
Yeah, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Yeah, exactly. And yeah, not everybody can be Tolkien, and not everyone has to be, right? Like we all don't. We all want to go away from like the tropes, right? Like we all get kind of tired of meeting in a tavern for the first time, but it's still, the idea of you're still meeting the party. You don't have to all be, you could all be related. You could all be already friends. You could be complete strangers. You could start in a battle. You could start in an arena. There's so many different ways that you can, still get around it. My player started a funeral. Started at a funeral. Hey, that's unique. I like that.
It would be so awesome if it was like one of the characters, like NPC people, or like their mom, or they're like the old teacher or something like that, and they are all somehow connected. That would be very cool.
I've had this idea for a while where you get everybody's backstory, right? Like ahead of time. It would be better if you could get the backstory ahead of time and kind of like figure this out. But when you do either the session 0 or the session 1, everybody gets a moment to talk about their backstory, right? And you kind of be like, hey, I want you just kind of prep and be like, hey, I want you to you give me your backstory, have a topic like this, like point out like, hey, I want you on the first session, I want you to talk about like this thing that happened, right? It's just something about their backstory. Like, this is a barbarian, and so like I have this scar on my face from a bar fight. Like, okay, we're going to mention that bar fight. Like, we're going to talk about that as like a defining moment to introduce your character, right? because everyone's going to have just something that they introduce their character with, a story from their backstory. But on that day, what you don't tell them is you use this as your session 0 to build the party, right? So everyone's there, they built their character, they have the backstory, you have the barbarian come in and go, yeah, so, you know, I'm a barbarian, here's what I look like. I have this really gnarly scar on my face because I was in this bar fight, right? And it's like, yeah, so it's like, yeah, what happened there, right? It's like, oh, I was just, I was drinking, I was getting really drunk, and this guy come up to me, and he just smacked, like, you know, but, you know, he just starts telling the story, and you're like, yeah. And then just at that moment, you fall over the table and go back to back with him, and instead of fighting each other, you guys realize, oh, we have to, like, and then you say, then you just kind of like have that moment where you describe like what happened to the two characters in that scene, let them kind of play off the story together, and then you have them split up. And then you go, okay, what was your story? Like, oh, well, you know, my dad died in a barn fire, and blah, 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 this all happened, and be like, yeah. And you were over here when that fire, like, basically kind of giving them all the reason of, you all made your stories separate, but you were all in each other's backstories somehow.
Right.
So when you meet, you're not friends, but you're all relationally weird. I've been playing around with this idea
You're all
I
connected.
think, because that would be kind of cool, because then you like, you use that as part of the plot of like, why do we all know each other? Like, how did we all come together?
I've thought about the idea of something similar where they mention like a certain character in their backstory, and when they're introducing themselves, like, oh, my best friend, whatever, and then I will interject, basically saying, by the way, so and so, that's the person that used to bully your little sister.
Oh, so yeah, you just
Like
make they're
they're connected in all these different ways, but none of them knew. Oh, I didn't know he used to do that.
And that's cool.
I didn't know that happened.
Yeah,
you know.
So yeah, very very similar. I think it would be so cool to like work in like a role play backstory, right? You're telling a story of your back character, and then you just throw the other character in there, and then they don't know it. You know, they don't meet, they don't do anything. They're in the situation together, and then they leave. So later in the game, they could like talk about that situation that they know that they were both in. Like, wait, I remember that bar fight. Like, that was, you were the dude with the thing. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you guys could like connect later down the road,
right,
knowing you guys experience those same things, right? And it could be anything from like a town fire. It doesn't have to be direct, right? You don't have to have directly contacted, but everybody getting to tell a story, and like you were saying, be like, yeah, that thing, you know about that. Like, you caused that fire. That was you and your brother accidentally doing this thing over. Like, I don't know. I haven't fully fleshed out all of the ways, because it's more about what the characters would give me. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I'm trying to come up with an idea of how you could do like a role play introduction session 0, instead of a role play from today's point of view, like you just met, to let's role play your backstories and how you guys randomly ran into each other. So I'll think on that one more. But yeah, unique little way to do that. Dungeon says actually did an individual prequels where they all met or had a moment with the NPC. They all loved her, and then season 1 they found out she was dead, and all sat at the same place at the funeral. Discovered it was a murder. Easy way to get them invested. Okay, so
I like that.
Yeah. You could do something very similar. Everyone gets a anonymous note to go to a funeral. They meet these other people, find out like it was like an orphanage kind of thing, or foster care, something like that. Like they all basically a mother figure. Mm-hmm. You could do that too. Or ever it'd be really interesting is have the party come together and they all know the individual differently. Like someone was there and it's like they get a note that says your nemesis is now dead. Would you like to see the funeral? Then the other one is your mentor is now dead. Would you like to see the funeral? Like, so they're all there for this person, but they're all there for completely different motivations. Right. That would make such intrigue though, of like having like like the mentor or like the student of it, but also the enemy, and then they're both but then they both have to party up. See, that's the hard part, is how do you get those two people to party up?
For sure. I mean, you give them a similar goal, but maybe for very different reasons. But like you have to
find the murderer. Like, it was supposed to be me. I want to find out who murdered him because I'm gonna go murder them. Right. Interesting. It's kind of what Dungeon did. Everyone had their own connection to the individual. That's cool. I like that. That's really interesting. Yeah, we're gonna have to play on some. We might have to do just an episode on like. I think we did. Didn't we do an episode on unique ways to intro characters. I think Lucifer was here for that one.
I don't know if it was for introing characters. I remember we did one
Or Session Zeros,
for backstories. What was it, backstories or backgrounds?
I thought we did one for, because I think I did an episode just with Lucifer because he had a unique way of introducing. So I think we did an episode where he just talked about how he introed like Session Zero'd everybody and got them connected. So yeah, we might have to do another episode on that. Just like, like brainstorming, like instead of a presentation episode, where we're talking about known information, it would be kind of cool to do like a workshop episode where we actually sit down and flesh these ideas out, like actually talk out, more than just in, 2 minutes, but actually sit down and go, okay, how would we do this? Like, what is a way that we could flesh this out to someone else can take it and use it, right?
Right.
Instead of just being dynamic and doing this, kind of like fleshing out the ideas. That would be kind of a cool episode. But anyway, that's enough of that tangent. And High Point and Groove, that's awesome. So let's go back to Shiver. So Shiver created Contact Other Plane and Simulacrum way back when, out of just pure obsession, interest, and creativity. Unfortunately, I was kind of hoping for more. Like I really wish some of this stuff had a little bit deeper lore in terms of like, motivations or the process that they took, or maybe specifically what their intent was. Like it would have been nice to know what he used this for, outside of, just learning how to do it. Like, was it a consistent thing that he did?
Right.
So
did he use it a lot? Did he have like 1,000,000 simulacrums of himself?
Yeah, did he have a more powerful version? Because that's one thing that I love to think about too, is like we said, spells are one of those things where like if it's known to everyone, if there's tons and tons and tons of it, it's probably a watered down version from the very original that the person learned how to do. Because, you need to make it easier and cheaper to do, and you need to make it sustainable for everybody. So it is really interesting too to imagine, like, did he have one that he could do more than just like one with, right? Like, could he keep it up for longer, and then it turned out that it was easier to do it this, but it doesn't last as long, right? Like the original material component was just a one of a kind. Like, there's so many different ways that you can like level up spells that are already in existence just by imagining that there's a version that isn't known that just costs too much to actually be justifiable. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so the next best version is the dulled down 9th level version or 5th level version that you know of. But the original version that, almost destroyed the planet, we don't talk about that one anymore.
Possible, but
we just don't. Yeah, let's just not talk about that one anymore. Another thing I like to think about too is adjusting material components when it makes sense. Like, for instance, if a spell had a material component of a feather, what happens if you replace it with an angel feather? So it's like those kind of just direct boosts where some spells don't really make sense to do that with, but it would be kind of cool to just play with the spell of what if you literally change the material component to the same component, but extreme.
I think that would be a very interesting set of options for people in games to actually engage with the material components, because for the most part nobody engages with material components. Like there's no purpose to it. Now granted, we did talk the other day about 90% of them are just jokes, right? And they're literally like memes, like about whatever the spell actually is. But to be honest, like if you have a bunch of spells at your disposal that have material components, like actual material components, and you have, for whatever reason, like a blessed version of something or a magical rod for some reason, and you use that rod as your tuning fork or something like that to transfer to a different plane or whatever the case may be, it might be able to, say, get you to a divine plane where it wouldn't normally be able to do that or something to that effect. So,
and that also opens up options to just do that, go to a different plane and take a similar item from that plane and then cast the spell, right? Like if it's like if it's a certain plant or whatever, go to a different plane, get that plant, see what the spell does. Those are kind of some dynamic ideas that I've always liked to play around with. But instead of making hard fast rules, I like those to be more like RP and plot driven.
But at least the rule is it's possible.
It's possible.
The rule is play with it, see what happens.
Yeah, it's just more of it's not meant to be recreated. It's meant to be I'll let you do it in this instance because it makes sense. but it's not going to be I want to use this permanently as my like replacement.
Well, would you say if they find out what it can do, would you say that they could repeat it?
Well, and again, that's where, for instance, like if you had a spell that needed a feather, and in that instance you could obtain an angel feather, it'd be like, it's not really intended to be repeatable because you're not going to get that material component a lot.
Say for whatever reason you had some encounter with an angel and they gifted you 3 of their feathers. And so you just have 3 feathers, right? And you experiment, hey, what if I use this feather for this thing? Would you say that they could do it again, the same, or to get either the same outcome? It
would really depend. There's too many factors to say yes or no on that, because again, it just really depends on the way I would look at it in terms of, is it balancing enough to allow it to be repeated, right? Because there are sometimes I will let things that are absolutely not balanced at all to be repeatable. I'll allow them to, in a situation of, it's you're under adrenaline, it's an emergency, it's literally life or death.
But then those scenarios would have to be repeated. Like if that's basically
but you wouldn't. But that's where it's like, but you're not going to expect the same result because you can't repeat. Like as I said, if I feel it's too powerful to be repeated, I'm going to break it down into it was that moment and that moment only that allowed it to happen. Whereas again, if it's one of those things where if it's simple, right? It's like, hey, I want to do the fly spell, but I have this, angel gave me different wing, these wings. If it's innocuous of it just lets me fly for 24 hours or whatever, I'm like, okay, cool. Mm-hmm. But if it's just one of those, like, I can use this to do the Super Saiyan version of it, it's like, right. That was a keep your ass alive moment, not I just unlocked a new level of power, right? And that's different, right? Because I do appreciate when people find a new way to do something, I want them to be able to repeat it, right? I want that consistency. But I couldn't tell you where that limit is, but there's eventually a limit to where it becomes that was a one time in that moment in order to keep the balance of, rule of cool, the plot needs to keep going, but I also don't want, just flat out, I don't want you to have that as like a new unlocked ability. Because, and that's just how I balance it. It doesn't come up a lot, so it's not like I have to worry too much about it. But I think it allows for more, like what we've talked about before, more interactive gameplay, because like you were saying with the material components, it gets the players to actually engage beyond, this spell's not going to help me because it doesn't do exactly what I need it to in this situation. It allows them to be like, okay, hear me out. You know what I mean? Like, and I love those moments where they're just like, okay, I know this sounds crazy, but in this moment, could this work, right? And it's like, those are the moments I like to entertain, because I kind of like the idea that, again, magic is a flow. Magic is more than just words on paper. You know what I mean? So, especially when it comes to, magic or physical acts, I think that there's always room to do a once in a lifetime thing.
Right.
I mean, hey, if a mother can lift a car off a baby, yeah, you know what? I think that you can pull off some pretty cool shit too.
But if you intentionally run over that person's baby just to, the next day to see if they can do it again,
perfect example, right? Yes, that mother is going to be able to do that, and theoretically, there's no reason why she shouldn't be able to. But if you try to reproduce it, well, guess what? You know how many muscles she pulled doing that? You know how, like, she's gonna need to recover. Like you said, it's not like you could do that twice in a row and be fine. Your body is
even triggering it again, because when you think you have that instant moment of panic, right? Because you're shocked, you're not prepared for it. If it happened the day before, it's not gonna be the same reaction. It's just not. You have the memory of it happening. You were there. Instead of being like, holy crap, oh my gosh, it's more going to be like, oh my gosh, not again.
Yeah, there's going to be so many different
reactions.
And that's where I say there's no definitive value. It's just, if I see that what they're trying to do is going to be a problem, I cap it at that. Okay, the stars aligned, you got to pull it off, but you have no idea how you did it, so you're not going to be able to reproduce it. And that's just, I feel like that's a safe way to do it.
Right.
But again, it hasn't happened enough, and I haven't had anyone argue when they got to do something cool, so it happens. But moving on. So let's look at what this spell was all about. Let's go all the way back to Simulacrum, first edition. Now, I couldn't get the Player's Handbook or the Dungeon Master's Guide for first edition, so we're going to have to go with the wiki for now. It's still all the same information, but I just couldn't get the actual. The rest of them we do. We have all of the actual sources for that. But Simulacrum, starting out as an illusionary spell. Now, I did find that really interesting because the way I've always looked at it is more of like, I've always thought of it as a clone. So it's interesting that it started out as an illusionary spell. That was one of the first things that I was like, oh, that threw me for a loop there. And I didn't know it was so powerful right out the gate. It started as a 7th level spell, which I love. I mean, absolutely think so.
Interesting.
But yeah, it started way out already as a 7th level right out the gate. But illusionary spell, that one caught me off guard. Technically, it was in first edition. It was an illusion phantasm, and 7th level. In second edition, it was
an illusion phantasm.
It was just
is that a specific?
It was it was like illusionary magic, like phantasm. So it was the idea of it was like a projection, like like a projection illusion.
Interesting.
Second edition still had the illusion. Looks like a couple other classes were able to do it. Artifice, mentalism. Okay, yeah. So these are Artificer and mentalists were able to also cast this at 7th level. So still remained illusion. Third edition, they went illusion, but now it was considered an illusion shadow.
Interesting.
And that's one of those really, they were considered shadow spells. So still remain an illusion, but you see it's kind of shifting a little bit in what it was. It never appeared in 4th edition, and then stayed an illusion spell in 5th edition. And it kept at 7th level. So it's always been basically a 7th level spell.
Until 5th edition?
No, it's always been a 7th level spell. Just from the very beginning. So started as a 7th level spell, and in 5th edition, 7th level spell.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Am I tripping? Did I think that was a 9th level spell?
I think so. I think it is a... This is 5th edition. Yeah, 7th level spell in 5th edition.
It is.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So, starting at further edition, this spell allows the creation of a... So, again, this is where we get some really unique lore, and we'll see these are where we'll see the changes. So, first edition. The spell allows the creation of a moving ice statue look-alike of a person.
Ice statue.
Yes. What's going on, Pokeniner? How you doing? Welcome to the history of Simulacrum. So right out the gate, this was an ice statue look-alike of a person. So a lot of very key specifics here right out the gate.
Okay.
The caster cast the spell on a rough humanoid form shape from snow or ice.
Okay.
So it was like an ice golem. The form then became a look-alike of a specific person with capabilities not as good as those of the original. How much it actually looked like the original depended upon the mundane disguise ability of the caster. Damage to the figure could only be repaired with special equipment and effort. The figure was under the complete control of the caster and could be ordered to do anything.
Okay.
Components. Simulacrum used verbal, somatic, and material components, namely a snow or ice figure, a body part of the creature to be copied, something like a hair would be enough, a ruby powder that increased in amount in relation to the creature to be copied. Now, we don't have anything further than that, unfortunately, because we don't have the original. So I do think that in the other editions we will see what this means, but I'm pretty sure it was like 1,000 GP worth of ruby powder per level of the caster, or per level of the creature being copied.
Interesting.
So it was like, 5th level creature would cost 5,000, whereas a 1st level creature would cost 1,000. If I remember correctly, I think another one of my references has that list, so we'll see that. But yeah, so hope we got one of the new submissions. Okay, excellent. Yeah, we did see that. So really interesting. I just wanted to point out the biggest thing, obviously, is unique to be an illusion spell, right? Mm-hmm. Not transmutation or anything, not summoning. So it is an illusion.
But it's weird. Even in the description, it says it's an ice statue, not an illusion.
Yeah. So you're not
It's an
casting an
actual thing.
illusion, but it is an illusion spell. So just goes back to how they used to manipulate magic. Like, again, what's really interesting, though, is it stayed an illusionary spell. You would think that would have
It
shifted,
still is,
but it's
yeah,
still
now
an
in
illusionary
fifth,
spell.
That's crazy.
But yeah, so the fact that it was supposed to be a person, right, not a creature, it's limited to a person, and it has to be made out of ice or snow. And you needed a piece from the person.
Wait.
And
So you made the distinction: a person, not a creature. Are you referring to humanoid, right?
yeah,
Okay.
because I look at that as like of a person. So person to me has a different connotation than creature, right? You'd be able to make an elf, a halfling, a human, maybe a dwarf, but you wouldn't be able to like make a dragon. Like,
if a dragon became like, because dragons have like humanoid forms at times,
I don't
or
know.
are there certain types of dragons that have humanoid forms?
I know that are traditionally they get polymorph, but there's not an official humanoid form. It's more of they typically have polymorph self as like their base abilities. But that's the thing. So I just take this as, again, and this isn't the official source. This may be somewhat doctored because it's the wiki. But I just look at that as a person, and this is also first edition. So remember, there's not nearly as many races as you could be. So remember, there's only like 4 or 5 races you could be in first edition.
For sure.
But to me, that just means you can't make animals. You can't make magical creatures. It's mainly meant for, like you said, humanoids. That's how I envision that was intended to be in first edition. And it makes sense that that's what the intent was, because it was meant to be a replacement for yourself, not really of other people. You could make another person, but it was intended to be of yourself.
Would you extend it to something with sentience? Like, not like a sword or anything like that, but like a no, because there's plenty of sentient trees. I don't think you could make a simulacrum of a simulacrum.
Yeah.
Okay, no, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, those are just the details that I pick out when I read this, right? And again, just the first version in a edition that has a lot of basics, right? I mean, let's face it, there was not a lot going on in first edition. So that was that. So yeah, let's pop over to here, and we will get into second edition. Now, one thing I, again, really wish we would have had is a little bit more like background lore of who used it and why. But this is what we got. So going out into second edition, we are in the second edition player's handbook. For those of you reading along at home, we are in the wizard spells in the 7th level, page 186, if you have the book at home. So Simulacrum is an illusionary phantasm spell. The range is touch. Components are verbal, somatical, and material. The duration is permanent. Now, we didn't get a duration in this one, but I do believe that the intent was that it is until it's destroyed.
Yeah, I mean, in 5th edition, it's until dispelled, so...
Yeah.
Okay.
Casting time is a special. Area of effect is 1 creature. Saving throw is none. So, by means of this spell, the wizard is able to create a duplicate of any creature. So again, big difference between a look-alike of a person to a duplicate of any creature. Very big difference in terminology, and like everybody loves to, break it down into, raw as what it's written. Those are 2 different spells in my opinion. Like, it got more powerful immediately. The duplicate appears to be exactly the same as the original, but there are differences. The Simulacrum has only 51 to 60%, 50 plus a 1d10 percentage, of hit points of the original creature. So I think in the first edition, I think it was 50% flat or less. But this one, 51 to 50, so 50% plus a d10.
Okay.
And that's just for hit points.
Out of curiosity, is the hit dice for a wizard a d10?
No, hit dice for wizard would be a d4.
Interesting.
Okay. There are personality differences. There are areas of knowledge that the duplicate does not have. And a detect magic spell will instantly reveal it as a simulacrum, as will a true seeing spell.
Okay.
At all times, the simulacrum remains under the absolute command of the wizard who created it. No special telepathic link exists, so commands must be exercised in some other manner.
Okay.
The spell creates the form of the creature, but it is only a zombie-like creature. So we're getting way more information already. And again, I like this. Now we're understanding how it's meant to be seen in action. But it's a zombie-like creature. A reincarnation spell must be used to give the duplicate a vital force. And a limited wish spell must be used to empower the duplicate with 40 to 65% of the knowledge of the personality of the original, calculated as 35 plus 5 to 30%. So 65, so 35 plus 5. Oh, okay. So it's a base of 35, and then you add anywhere between 5 and 30% of the knowledge of the original. So you have to have 2 different spells added on to make this thing more than just a zombie.
Okay.
But I do like that. I do like that giving it a vital force, basically meaning that it can do and almost interact by itself, and then being able to give it the original knowledge, which is kind of useful if you want it to act and go as if it is like the person. The level, if any, of the simulacrum is from 20 to 50% of that of the original creature.
The level, okay.
Yeah, so the level is capped at 20 to 50%. The duplicate creature is formed from ice or snow, so that hasn't changed. Which is really interesting because there's something to be said about where you can cast this at that point. Like, does weather affect it? Mm-hmm. Or does it say sustained once you've cast the spell? The spell is cast over the rough form, and some piece of the creature to be duplicated must be placed inside of the snow or ice. So kind of, again, like a piece of hair. Mm-hmm. Additionally, the spell requires powdered ruby. The simulacrum has no ability to become more powerful. It cannot increase in level or abilities.
That's familiar.
If destroyed, it reverts to snow and melts into nothingness. So I'm assuming the spell keeps the snow from melting, like it preserves the snow for the time being.
Right, kind of like Olaf.
Yeah, exactly. Damage to the simulacrum can be repaired by a complex process requiring at least 1 day, 100 GP per hit point, and a fully equipped laboratory.
Okay.
And that's it.
So 100 GP per what?
Per hit point.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
So
you got 100 hit points. Well, that's going to be expensive.
Exactly. Well, and that's what, again, it's meant. So from what I understand, it's like a lot of this really, in my interpretation, this was meant more as a assistant and an aid, like an advanced version of Magic Hand, than it ever was a additional combat. Like, I think we think of this now as more of adding another body to combat, which is very viable. But from my understanding, this was more meant for, like, again, we think about Shiver, who made it, like, probably was just trying to, like, get more shit done and wanted to have something better than Mage Hand, created this out of boredom to see, can I actually create a duplicate of myself, figured this part out, and then that's just, kind of why people realized it. Like, imagine any, wizard, instead of having a sidekick that you can't trust, imagine being able to create Simulacrum, and if you get mad and kill it, you just cast it again, and you get another one. Mm-hmm. It is the perfect, and it knows what you know, up to 60%. So it's like, it doesn't have to survive, it just has to be able to do what you do, right? If you have a process that you need done, it should be able to know what you need done around the house, right? So, really interesting, though, again, I find it fascinating that's an illusion spell. Just, I'm trying to think of, like, I mean, it could be an alteration spell.
I would think conjuration.
Conjuration.
More than anything, yeah.
It's just, it's just very, very interesting that they consider it an illusion, because you're, like, manipulating it. I mean, I guess it's not like, it's not really like polymorph, but what is animate? What is it? Animate object? What is animate object? Because if animate object is an illusion spell, then I would understand.
I feel like that's an enchantment.
but yeah, you know what I mean. Like, if animate object is anything else, then you would think that this would fall in line with that. I just don't know what spell level that is.
For 5th edition, it's a 5th level, and And it's a transmutation spell.
Yeah, Animate Dead is Necromancy. Animal Growth is Alteration. Interposing Hand is Evocation. And... yeah, Plant Growth is Alteration. Polymorph Self is Alteration. Polymorph Other is Alteration. Mass Morph is Alteration. Yeah, I'm really confused on why they chose to be an illusion spell, because looking at the other illusion spells, like, it doesn't really fit.
It's not. It is kind of like. Yeah, I feel like they kind of chose illusion because they couldn't find something better.
What's even funny, the Wraith form is an alteration illusion spell, so it falls under both of those, which is really weird.
They have combinations back then?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
That's super crazy. I guess it just could be, done by both classes. That's fantastic. I found that very interesting. So yeah, so that's second edition. Got a lot more detail about how it's intended to be used. I kind of like...
When you say more detail, are you thinking that this spell changed from the first edition? So it kind of like evolved over the years from the original intent? And I don't know if somebody took this spell, saw this spell, because you've said in your realm you have old versions of spells that do different things. So... would you say this is a new version? Maybe not the original creator, but somebody...
I don't think it's intended to be a new version. I think this is intended, based on what I've been able to pull, it's more or less a refined version. It's originally, they said, hey, here's a thing, you can create a golem-like version of yourself. Then they were like, there's more to it. So they just wanted
to be more specific with the same original spell.
I still think that this is intended lore-wise to be the very original spell that was created, that was still created. I just think that they refined the details to give us the idea that it wasn't just an instant, this is a duplicate of you. It's a process. It's a spell. I like that they added the two other options of how to give it more stuff.
Yeah.
But otherwise, it's still just a zombie. I really feel like it's just more detailed in what you want in a spell, right? I think it just fleshed it out more.
Okay.
But that is a good question. We'll see how the next versions fare, and we'll see if we feel like the spell could be justifiably in the lore have changed, or is it the same one just redefined? That's a good point.
Okay.
And yeah, second edition, my other notes were basically, other than just refining the hit points. So I was able to find that, yes, it was 1,000, in first edition, it was 1,000 GP per hit point of the creature. That was the difference. It wasn't per level. I had that wrong.
No, you corrected me. I thought it was per level. You corrected me, it was per hit point. That's why I was like, they got 100 hit points.
No, that's to repair it.
Well, that's to repair it.
Yeah, but in order to actually create it, it was also 1,000 GP per hit point. So it was fucking expensive.
Good God. Good freaking God.
And then now we have it to where the repair cost is 100 GP per hit point.
Is the base cost static, or is the base cost...
So, second edition doesn't list a base cost for casting.
But they do have the... Didn't they say something about a ruby?
Well, it does. It does need ruby powder. Duplicate must be exactly blah, blah, blah. The rogue creature personality. Detect magic spell. At the time of the blah, blah, blah. The spell creates a creature. Wish spell, the spell, blah, 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 creates a form, or if piece of creature must be inside the snow. Additionally, the spell requires powdered ruby, but it doesn't give an amount.
Oh.
It just says it requires powdered ruby. Whereas, first edition, it was powdered ruby in the amount of.
And usually, what I recall, whenever they give you an amount, that means it's consumed. But if they don't give you an amount, well, if they don't give you an amount, then it's kind of like generic stuff.
Yeah, I assume that powdered ruby is just, superfluous. Take it easy, Hulepa. Hopefully you have a good rest of your day. Yeah, so that's interesting. It doesn't specifically tell you, but you could extrapolate that it might be 100 GP worth per hit point. If that's the repair cost, you could extrapolate that that's also the actual ruby cost.
Right.
Which, that's fair point to go from 1,000 to 100 per hit point. I would appreciate that. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's a lot more doable. All right, but other than that was really the only changes. So 3rd edition. Oh yeah, 3rd edition also continued with 100 gold pieces per hit point of the duplicate for creation. So must just be that consistency. So now let's go. So if y'all want to join me over here, we have 3rd edition. See love how this book is laid out.
No, that's pretty cool.
It's fucking nasty. That's a line. That's a line of text. That's a line of text. So bad. Like, it would be great in person. It would be great to read this in person, but on this, it's like so difficult.
You gotta.
All right, so here we are.
It looks pretty.
It does look pretty though. Okay, so now we have Simulacrum from 3rd edition /3.5. We have an illusionary shadow. Now this is a sorcerer wizard spell of 7th level. Components: you have verbal, somatical, material, and XP. I don't know what that is. It's been a long time since I've looked into spellcasting in 3rd edition.
Interesting.
Now, what's very interesting too is 1st edition we didn't have a casting time. 2nd edition the casting time was special, and I don't think it actually mentioned how long it was going to take. No, it actually does not mention how long it's going to take. It just says special. So in 3rd edition it takes 12 hours to cast this.
Okay.
Range 0 feet. Effect 1 duplicate creature. Duration instantaneous. Saving throw none. Spell resistance none. Simulacrum creates an illusionary duplicate of any creature. Again, they say illusionary duplicate, but it's basically an animated golem. I don't understand why they're saying it's an illusionary duplicate. The duplicate creature is partially real and formed from ice or snow. What do you mean by partially real? It's basically a golem. It appears to be the same as the original, but it has only 1/2 of the real creature's levels or hit die, and the appropriate hit points, feats, skills, ranks, and special abilities for a creature of that level or hit die. So if it's a leveled character, half. If it's just a creature, half its hit points or half its hit die.
Okay.
And then you get whatever they would have had at that level. You can't create a simulacrum of a creature whose hit die or levels exceed twice your caster level.
Okay.
Which would make sense because that would be creating a simulacrum stronger than you.
Okay.
Because remember, it's only half their level. So if you're level 5 and they're level 10, you can only create a level 5 simulacrum. But if they were level 12, you couldn't create a level 6 simulacrum because you're only level 5. Right. So you can't create something that's more powerful than you. I like that. I like that little subtlety to kind of break down. Because again, that's probably the way people were going to abuse it, is just create more stronger simulacrums as, fodder. You must make a disguise check when you cast the spell to determine how good the likeness is. I like that addition.
So you're literally sculpting your simulacrum.
Because the other ones made reference to
which
like how
makes sense
good.
Why it takes so long.
Yeah, because the other ones were saying like how good of a disguise you have to have, but they didn't actually have a check. So I like that. Disguise check when creating it. A creature familiar with the original might detect the ruse with a successful spot check, opposed by the caster's disguise check, or a DC 20 sense motive check.
Interesting. Okay.
So if you know, so if you know them well enough, you know that they're off. They're not perfect. Makes sense.
You acted a little weird, Frank.
At all times, the simulacrum remains under your absolute command. No special telepathic link exists, so commands must be exercised in some other manner. A simulacrum has no ability to become more powerful. It cannot increase in level or its abilities. If reduced to 0 hit points or otherwise destroyed, it reverts to snow and melts instantly into nothingness. A complex process requiring at least 24 hours. 100 GP per hit point, and a fully equipped magical laboratory can repair damaged to a simulacrum. Like how this one says magical laboratory now. It's like it just keeps adding little tidbits.
Specific over general.
Right. Material component. The spell is cast over the rough snow or ice form, and some piece of the creature to be duplicated, hair, nail, or the like. Must be placed inside the snow or ice. Additionally, the spell requires powdered ruby worth 100 GP per hit die. Oh, per hit die, not hit point. Oh, I had that wrong in my notes. In this, in third edition, 100 GP per hit die of the simulacrum to be created.
So that's almost per level. If third edition works the same way as fifth edition, because every level you go up, that's how many hit dice you have.
Yeah, so it would be so however many levels, and then here's the XP cost. It costs 100 XP per hit die of the simulacrum to be created, a minimum of 1,000 XP.
Oh shoot! So you're giving up your own levels to do this.
I kind of dig that.
That's actually genuine. Oh.
I kind of dig that though.
I like that a lot. I really do, because there are I keep seeing, especially like these random. I saw another stupid simulacrum build where this guy just cast like 9 simulacrums and like gave everybody each one of his simulacrums cast the wish spell, and so they don't have to worry about. And so the
question is can that actually work? I don't know. Yeah, I think I saw something similar to that, but I think there is a problem with that.
But if you're giving up XP to create one of these things, especially because they have the potential to be so powerful, but again, that in my mind, I'm still thinking of this as a 9th level spell. Like, I'm still thinking of this as like a huge.
Well, because what spell is the wish level?
Wish is 9.
So what's the minimum level you have to be to cast that?
You don't get 9th level spells until like 17 or 18. Like,
so
like
you can't have a simulacrum with wish spell.
Well, in these editions, yes.
Okay, yeah.
In these, I don't know how. I haven't fully read through the 5th edition version, and that's what.
But all of them are supposed to be weaker than you. So if you think about it, if they are supposed to be weaker, even at level 20, I don't think they're only going to be 3 levels weaker. You know what I mean? Like the idea behind, I think that's why it breaks, is because technically there'd be no way to create a simulacrum that could cast wish. Because it wouldn't be a high enough level caster. But it depends. We'll get there when we get to 5th edition and whether that happens. So yeah, I'm kind of liking 3rd edition. It seems a little bit harsher. It definitely seems like they're trying to knock it down a peg, but make it to where if you want it, it's there. It's worth it. But is it worth it? You know, just you make sure it is worth it at that point. So that was 3rd edition. 4th edition got rid of it completely. Like they did with a lot of good things. 4th edition just said,
I lightweight feel like 4th edition's just a different game.
It is.
Like, it's a different game. You know, it did whatever it did. It took inspiration.
It tried to be a video game TTRPG, and it didn't work.
Live your life.
But yeah, let's go on to 5th edition. Where is... There we are. 5th edition. Whoa. Hello?
Holy... Oh, yeah.
There we go. All right, so now we are down to the Simulacrum everybody is probably most familiar with. 5th edition Simulacrum, 7th level illusion spell, casting time of 12 hours, range is touch. We have a verbal, somatical, and material component, pretty much as always. Now, this one gives us that the material component, snow or ice in quantities sufficient to make a life-sized copy of the duplicate creature. So again, life-sized copy of the duplicate creature, meaning creature. Any creature of any size, as long as you can make the snow out of it. Which means this also really limits where you can be in casting this. You can't just have this anywhere.
That's fair.
Some hair, fingernail clippings, or other piece of the creature's body placed inside the snow or ice. A powdered ruby worth 1,500 GP sprinkled over the duplicate and consumed by the spell. There you go. You did mention that it usually says it's consumed. So this one has a flat cost, 1,500 GP.
It seems a bit low.
It seems awfully low.
Especially comparative, but...
It seems so fucking cheap.
But I will say... a lot of spells around this level in 5th edition require things about this. level, you know. So I think in 5th edition they made the cost equivalent to the level, not to necessarily what the spell does.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah, if that's the standard kind of price range for stuff like this, then that would make sense.
Yeah.
So duration, it lasts until dispelled or destroyed. So you shape an illusionary duplicate of one beast or humanoid. Again, it goes from creature to now beast or humanoid. That's very weird that they change. Usually you don't see that language change up, especially in 5th edition.
In one spell, yeah.
That's very strange that, yeah, it says a copy of the duplicated creature, and then you duplicate one beast or humanoid.
I'll say this. Normally, and maybe it's just because they're not being very specific in the what do you call it? In the material component section, they usually get down to like the nitty gritty details in the.
That is fair. That's more of
that's
more of a note than it is the rule.
Like, so they could use one word instead of
that
specifying.
That makes sense. It would. I think it would have been better to say target.
That's fair. That's very fair.
Because then it wouldn't have been confusing. It's just unique. You usually don't see
very much so.
Them change up like that. But okay, I digress. You shape the illusionary duplicate of one beast or humanoid that is within range for the entire casting time of the spell. That's another add-on.
Say that one more time.
So you shape an illusionary duplicate of one beast or humanoid that is within range for the entire casting time. So basically, you can't just see it and then start casting it and let it fuck off. It has to remain
they
there.
Gotta be there, at the very least within sight.
Yeah, I like that. I like that little tiny addition because you can't just make something of someone who isn't here anymore. Like, they have to be part of it, right? So that could also mean that you could have them chained. Doesn't have to be willing. They just have to be there.
That's fair. That's very fair.
But it's again, little, this is what I meant, right? There's just these little tiny lore changes and little description changes. It still does the same thing, but these little changes are really unique to see where each edition's trying to approach it from.
Interesting.
Let's see. So, the duplicate is a creature partially real and formed from ice or snow, and it can take actions and otherwise be affected as a normal creature. So it can take actions and be affected as a normal creature. Both of those are happening as a normal creature. So gives it a lot more mobility and flexibility of what you can do with it. It appears to be the same as the original, but it has half the creature's hit point maximum and is formed without any equipment. Otherwise, the illusion uses all of the statistics of the creature it duplicates.
So, according to this, there's no weakness to it.
Other than half hit points. Half hit points and all of its stats. Okay.
So, like, whatever your actual your strength, dexterity, all that stuff, they're just going to be copied.
True.
Over as is.
So the Simulacrum is friendly to you and creatures you designate. It obeys your spoken command, moving and acting in accordance with your wishes and acting on your turn in combat.
That one does specifically say spoken command, which is interesting. All the other ones just said you got to figure out how to talk to it, whether it's you create a telepathic link, but...
Well, no, the other ones just said that you don't have it, so you have to... Basically, it says like you get... I think what they were trying to imply is you either have to talk to it or give it a hand signal. It has to be able to know that you
have to communicate to like you would any other.
It's not mage hand.
Yeah.
It's not mage hand that just does what you say. You have to be able to communicate. Because I'm thinking
you could potentially. There are certain even in with psionics, like you could make a mental link with them using psionics,
and it just doesn't come
default that way. So,
but this one is saying that it obeys your spoken command, but it doesn't say any other thing. So I think it's just simplifying it. It sounds like it's just trying to simplify it. Maybe
feel like yeah.
Moving and acting in accordance with your wishes and acting on your turn in combat. I think that's where most people think that's what it's meant for, but I don't think it's meant for combat. It just acts on your turn in combat, but again, I don't really ever think that it was intended for that. The Simulacrum lacks the ability to learn or become more powerful, so it never increases in level or other abilities, nor can it regain expended spell slots. So that implies it has spell slots equal to whatever you had. If the Simulacrum is damaged, you can repair it in an alchemical laboratory using rare herbs and minerals worth 100 GP per hit point it regains. The Simulacrum lasts until it drops to 0, at which point it reverts to snow and melts instantly. If you cast a spell again, any currently active duplicates you created with this spell are instantly destroyed. So there's the other issue with multiple Simulacrum.
Interesting.
So Simulacrum immediately breaks if you try to do it more than once.
Interesting. Okay.
And so, yeah, so this one, that is interesting. So this one does not mention that it is of a lower level than you. Nor does it say that, so because it's not half that creature's level, it is a duplicate. It just has half their hit points. So I guess one could try to make the argument that because it's half the hit points, you would go off of whatever level that equates to. Mm-hmm. But I don't think most people would like that. I think most people are going to look at it as it's a weaker version of who I am right now and can do essentially the things that I can do. Because it doesn't say that it doesn't have... Now, the other argument I would make, though, is not because the other versions said it was dumb and like zombie-like, but because this one says it obeys your spoken command, moving and acting in accordance with your wishes and acting on your turn in combat. It lacks the ability to learn and become more powerful. It doesn't technically state that it knows everything you know. It's just a duplicate as in a lookalike. So it implies it has spell slots because it has your stats.
I would also kind of...
But it's interesting. It doesn't imply it has a class. It doesn't imply it has your abilities. It doesn't actually imply anything of that.
For me, it feels almost like an unseen servant. It's just a dude that's just sitting there. Just follows you around
because it
doesn't do anything autonomously on its own.
Let's break down these words. It's an illusionary duplicate. This is not a recreation. It is not a clone. It is an illusionary duplicate of your person. So realistically, this is just an ice golem that looks like you, has half your hit points and all of your stats. The really weird thing is the only thing that insinuates it even has a class and can do things like you is because of this line right here. That's the only thing right there that indicates it has any ability, is because it indicates it can't regain a spell slot, so it insinuates, it implies there is a spell slot to be had. If you did not have... What is that? 7 words? If you did not have those 7 words, this could easily be interpreted as a near lifeless golem, right? It is just a golem that obeys commands. Because they said it can't regain spell slots, I think that's where we all assume it has my class and all of my abilities.
Right. Because that in combination with what it said earlier, that it has all of your stats, and it just says stats in general. It doesn't say all your specific class features. It doesn't say all your racial features. And stats indicating
strength, dexterity, wisdom, but not
necessarily. It could be articulate. It could be assumed that you don't mean that. But with this line, it makes most sense that it does mean that.
Yeah.
Right.
So I can see why this spell in its current form, I think, is actually at its worst in terms of description, because it's not definitive enough. You know what I mean? Like, it is a little bit... they could have just added it is an exact duplicate, partially real. It appears to be the same as the original, but it appears to be the same as the original. Why didn't they add in with its... all of its capabilities, right? Or with its same class at its equal. Right. Like, the fact that they didn't...
If there was just like a small line in there that says, with all of your class features or something to that effect.
But they also didn't add in a with none of your class features. Like, it doesn't say with all of it, and it doesn't say without it. And again, if it wasn't for these words right here, you would never be able to actually believe... Like, again, without those words, there's no indication that it should have anything based on your class. That's the only thing that's giving it credence that it should be... Because, again, you're assuming if I copied a wizard, like myself, if I copied myself, it can't regain spell slots. Therefore, it had spell slots. Therefore, it copied what I copied. Therefore, it's very interesting how we're having to compile that.
And that's only possible spell slots, because you can use it on other things. So if you copy a cat, the cat's not going to have spell slots innately.
That's what I'm saying. That's why I'm saying it's these words that make us assume that whatever you copy gets its capabilities, right? If you copy a barbarian, you assume it has one rage. Well, you assume it can rage, right?
Right.
Now, I would take this as if you can't expend a spell, if you can't regain spell slots, you can't regain rage. Like, I would assume if you do the Simulacrum of a barbarian, it gets one rage. That's how I would imply it, though.
Yes. I also like that. I just say you can't recover. It would make most sense that you can't recover your class features.
You can't recover. You get the one-time use. Because if we're going to say that it is a copy of you to the T in order that it know, because remember, this one also doesn't say that it doesn't know what you know, but it says it only like goes with your command. It doesn't have a life of its own. So it's hard to make the argument that it has all of your knowledge. The other games even said it only has up to 60% of what you know, which I would assume means either A, your day-to-day life, so it can be better a servant, or it knows your combat maneuvers. That's why I interpret why it said 60%.
So give me an example of where having the knowledge is important. Like imagine.
So I'm a wizard. I have my castle, right? I create Simulacrum and be like, hey, go clean this up. I need you to get these scrolls and I need you to write these notes. You know 60% of my knowledge, so you know where those scrolls are. You know where my pen and paper are. You know how to walk around my house. I don't have to show you my house. You're my Simulacrum. But if someone captures you, you don't know my safe code. You don't know where my secret door is. You don't know.
But even if they did, how would they extract that from a golem?
Well, I mean, you could assume that you can torture it or mentally probe it. You know, again, like you said, psionics. If you can mentally probe it, you would be able to get information. So I assume that when it limits how much knowledge you have, I look at that as what it can do and what it can reproduce from you. This one doesn't have that limitation, but it also is very limited. It says it obeys your spoken command, moving and acting in accordance with your wishes, and acting on your turn in combat. So it assumes that it can attack. But if you're if you copied a fighter who has extra attack, can it extra attack? Does it have that knowledge, or can it just do a base attack? So and then again, does that mean that this golem can only pick up the same weapons that its creator, that the thing I created it can pick up, or can it just pick up any weapon and use it?
I mean, let's say it could pick it up. Like, you could pick it up, but it might end up using it as an improvised weapon or something that it's not trained in, or whatever the case may be.
And that's the thing, is because it's like, it leaves almost too much, and literally a small sentence of what happens with your class features. If it just mentioned what's up with your class features, it would solve all of the confusion. But all we have is this. Nor can it regain expended spell slots. That's all we have to go on, and all we have to assume is that if the creature that was copied had spell slots, therefore this has spell slots. Therefore, anything that you copy, it has those class features. Like, I'm not liking how it's written, but I'm not disagreeing with its interpretation. That is the proper interpretation because of this line. Because of this little piece, the correct interpretation is the Simulacrum has your class features. Now, what the limitations of those are, like, do you only get one rage? Like, do you only get, like, from a rogue, can they only hide in shadows once? Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot more to be had on what class features are reproducible and which ones aren't. But I don't think that there's any misunderstanding that that this line is intended to say it also has your capabilities. It has your class features. I just wish they would be more specific.
Yeah.
Because this just gives it too much of a, I can kind of say whatever I want in terms of what it can do, right? I mean, it's saying it's an illusionary duplicate, but it's not limiting what it knows about me. And if it's my class, and if it knows my spells and has my spell slots, what else does it know? Like, doesn't it know what my intentions are? Or like, it's very unique. And out of all of the descriptions, I think I like this one the least, just because it's the least fulfilled.
The description itself leaves a lot wanting.
Yeah,
for sure.
But again, surprisingly enough, the spell hasn't really changed. It hasn't really gotten more powerful. Like, it's a constant duplicate. The value has changed. I think it's a lot cheaper now, and I don't agree with that. But I think it should be. I really do think that it should be based on how powerful you want it to be.
So, to be honest, I really like the idea. I really loved the idea in third 3.5 of the XP, and I'm kind of okay with it being an exact duplicate of you at your current level if it costs you XP.
Oh, yeah.
If it costs you XP, and so it'll be like, okay, your Simulacrum is that powerful, but you're not anymore.
Yeah, you've just dropped however much it took.
Right, like however many levels you...
Well, and what I like too, I like the idea of what I would like them to put in here too, is you get, I would be okay with you getting to choose the level of the Simulacrum. Because right now, all of them basically say, it's going to cost you this much to make the duplicate. So if that's a 7th level fighter, and you want to make it half, it's going to cost 3 levels. But I would love the idea to be like, but what if I only want it as a level 1 version of me?
So imagine this. Like I'm even okay with the expense being only like the 1500 GP or whatever, especially because it's a level 7 spell.
Right.
But
the XP is what's the hard part.
XP is you pay this much XP per level, period. And that determines what level it is. So if you only pay this much XP, it's only this level. If you pay this much XP, it's this level, right? You know? And so that balances out, for me, how much investment you're giving. It gives it a standard for the spell. You got a standard cost. You got a standard a description of what it does. But then, if you want it to be a certain level, it's got to be this. And when it comes to the knowledge, that's where I'm kind of...
Because it's an illusion, right? Like, the problem is like, how are you copying that? Like, how are you copying knowledge with an illusionary spell?
That's really... I personally...
And especially because
I think it should be changed to conjuration or whatever creation of a doll would be.
And even so, like, because it's like, it obeys your spoken command, it's not autonomous. So if it had your knowledge, it would act on its own, but it's not acting on its own. It needs direction. You need to tell it what to do.
That's why I'm like, it's more like an unseen servant than anything else. And like, I would say that because you created it, it would be able to do like simple mundane things. Like if you say, hey, go get me a wrench, it can go get you a wrench. It can.
But this is where, going back to your question of what's important about the knowledge, is with this, it's like it can obey your spoken command. So without knowledge, you'd have to be like, okay, you're going to go to that door, walk down the stairs, turn left, go down the hall. You have to explain it. Whereas if it had any level of knowledge, you could be like, hey, go pick me up the wrench in the basement. It would have a fundamental understanding of it.
I get where that's going, but I'm saying that I feel like the magic can transmit your intent to it, right? Even though you don't have a telepathic connection with it necessarily, like...
But the thing is, like, but what if you're not? But what if you're creating, like, what if you created a Simulacrum for someone else? You're still in control of it, but it's somebody else, right? Because that's where I have an issue of the sharing of knowledge. Is if it's not me, if I'm not the one creating it, how did I create the knowledge? How did I rip the knowledge from that other person with an illusion spell?
Yeah, because I can imagine, especially if you're using this on somebody else, the biggest reason why you're going to do that is to pass them off as that person.
Yes.
And so them being able to speak in their tone of voice, in their mannerisms, and be able to say the right things if you're in the military, know the right ranks and stuff, to like just all the basic things. Even if me, the player, doesn't know it, them as the Simulacrum would be able to get me through.
Right.
Like, I can see that being like a valuable aspect.
Right, which is why I love the idea of 60%, because it's not like they're going to, it's not like you could, because here's the problem with 60%, right? I make a Simulacrum of you. You're the emperor of the kingdom. I make a Simulacrum of you, and now I'm in full control of it, and I order the Simulacrum to take control of the kingdom and give out the special order to lock down the kingdom, right? The nuclear launch codes. Mm-hmm. Should that Simulacrum have it? Should that Simulacrum, like, it knows how to be a king, it knows how to be an emperor, it knows how to be like you, how to talk like you, but should it know details like that? That's where I imagine the 50 to 60% knowledge cap.
Would know like your wife and your kids' names? Is that included in 60%?
And that's where I'm thinking is that's where, for me, I would start to think that because it's an illusionary spell, that 60% is more or less what you can perceive. I can see how you dress. I can see how you operate. I've heard you. But I don't know what's going on in your head.
Yes, but would you say that would counteract them being able to know military ranks? Because I can see you, but I wouldn't be able to.
And that's why I have a problem with this spell. Like the more I read this spell, because
the
more of it,
knowledge.
Well, and that's the thing is like the more of it was, it's always been an illusion. It's meant to look like you, right? It's not meant to like go and have a conversation and do a meeting for you, but walking around like imagine you want to. You think there's a hostile location, so you make the simulacrum, and he walks in front of you, and you're just one of the guards. So if he gets assassinated, you're a guard. You just walk off in full garb. You just got assassinated, and no one knows the difference, right? These are the things I think of like what you would want simulacrum for.
This spell, does it talk about it turning into ice when it dies?
Yes, it will turn in. It'll turn and melt.
Turn into ice. Okay.
So. So in second edition, you got to remember, it says it has 51 to 60% of the hit die. There are personality differences. There are areas of knowledge that the duplicate does not have. So second edition even points to the idea that this is not a mental copy.
Yeah.
It is a physical copy. So even more so, I kind of like that they didn't comment on it because that's okay. So that's telling me that the simulacrum is a visual copy of you. Somehow it has your class features, but it doesn't have your knowledge. That's how I imagine that this is. It's basically like a magical copy of a blank version of your class character. Like imagine that. That's what simulacrum is. It is a blank version of your character sheet. I'm just going to take your character sheet, blank it all out, and go there. Well, this is my NPC.
Not blank it all.
Well, blank your name, blank your details. But it's like, here's your class character sheet with your stats and your class features. Boom, that's my simulacrum. No name, no nothing. There's no personality to it. It's just the stat block.
It's just the character sheet. Because, like, you bring all the personality to it. You bring all the knowledge to it. But if you're just stats on a page, that would make sense.
So yeah, because again, it's the whole fucking issue with it doesn't get spell slots back, insinuating that it has it. So it has to have class features, but it doesn't know anything that you know. Like that's what fifth edition is feeling like to me. It's basically a blank version of you. It's a clone of what you are, not who you are. Maybe that's a better version of it.
Interesting.
But I still don't think illusion spell makes sense, and I think they need to just add a little bit of differentiation language in order to help make us understand really what its capabilities are. Because it really doesn't tell you what it's capable of. It just says that it can't regain spell slots. Doesn't help me. Like, it doesn't really help me understand it. But yeah, that was it. That was the history of Simulacrum. I think that it's gone through some unique changes. I kind of like third edition's the best.
I think it's the closest. I do think it's the closest.
I like what second edition was trying to do with its explanation, but I think third edition nailed it. Like you said, it nailed it with the cost. It nailed it with the XP usage. And it had, I think, generally the best description. Though Third edition did best with its implementation of how to cast it. I think second edition did it best explaining what it looks like when it's cast. Because I love that second edition said it's like zombie-like, and then you have to do these other spells to give it vitality and make it autonomous.
What was that from? That was second?
That was second. So it's like you had to do...
I like that.
You had to do one spell to give it vitality, and then you had to do a different spell in order to actually give it knowledge. And that made sense, right? Like, what was that, 186? That's the thing, right? Is... Was it? No, I think I lost it. Oh yeah, no, 186. I got it. So you needed to cast, because it was zombie-like. So basically no knowledge, no understanding. It wasn't even autonomous. You had to tell it exactly what to do, right? Reincarnation would give it vital force. So act autonomously, be able to be smart. And then...
So... When you say vital force, give me an example of what that would look like if you only use that spell on your simulacrum.
So a zombie, not going to do anything. It will be
it's literally just going to stand there and let people hit it unless you say do something.
And if you do, and the doing something is going to be motor skill basic,
Yeah,
right?
Attack.
Vitality
move,
will
run.
be it would defend itself, it would walk around, it would stay near you naturally.
So would you say that its AC would be a flat 10 and not include its dexterity if it's not even going to try and defend itself?
Yeah. I would 100% agree that the zombie version would do nothing. Unless told to do something, it would do nothing. Whereas the Vitality Force would at least give it a sense of autonomy. Like, if you cast this and left it as a zombie and walked away, it would sit there. If you cast this and then cast Reincarnation, it would start to follow you.
So
naturally.
Now, what if somebody else came up and walked up to it and just started talking to it? And you
only you can control it.
No, you can control it, but if you cast Vitality on it, would it interact back with them? Would it say hello? Would it be
if
like,
you told
hi,
it to?
how's it your... Well, otherwise it's just going to sit there and, like, be a zombie even after you cast Vitality.
I think the difference between a zombie is a zombie would just look dead. It would just stand there. Whereas this would probably just do idle stuff. Like,
what if I gave it, like, a general order to basically, like, act normal? So if somebody comes up to you in broad daylight and says hello or good morning, you can say hello or good morning. Exactly.
It might be, you could say it would be verbal, maybe it would not be verbal, maybe it would be like a smile and a nod, and then it would go back to whatever. Like, it would give responses.
You're saying in order for that to happen, you would have to give it a command to do so. You would have to say, I want you to do the X, Y, and Z from now on.
I would say, like, okay, so if I were running it and someone just did the reincarnation to give it vitality, I would probably run it as it would appear as if it's lifelike and real, but it would have no real, like, no one else would walk up to it and talk to it. Like, again, you walk up to say hi, it might wave at you, it might smile, it might nod, but it's going to just autonomously just be there doing whatever.
It's doing its default dance.
Yeah.
It's just standing there.
It's not going to talk back to you. It's not going to give you information unless I tell it to answer those questions or talk to these people. Then it would give very basic stuff, right? It would have a very basic idea of life, but no more than what you would expect an NPC shopkeeper to have, right? Like, super minimal. Because then you have the wish spell, which empowers it with the knowledge. And this is where I really like second edition, is it doesn't, the illusion spell should not give it knowledge, especially of the thing it created. The wish spell, being able to give it knowledge of the creature it created, that is truly
that
different.
100%?
That is what this says. It says you can use the reincarnation spell to give it the vital force. A limited wish spell must be used to empower the duplicate with 40 to 65% of the knowledge
so not 100%.
And personality of the creature it created. But so, no, not 100%. So again, you could impersonate the king. You could have him walk with you and tell the guards to get out of the way, and everybody would believe it, but he's not going to get you to the vault. He's not going to show you where the vault is. He's not going to tell you what the command word is. He's not going to be able to give you the keys to everything, but everybody would assume it's him unless you ran into the queen. And then the queen's going to be like, that's not my husband. Like, you know what I mean? And that's what I like about it, right? It's meant to, like you said, it's meant to either make people think it's you when you don't want to be seen in public. It's meant to know the layout of your house so you can tell it to go do shit and not have to explain in excruciating detail where, you need this stuff done. You can just be like, hey, go get me that thing, right? Those are the reasons why I think it's important, because it can't be abused. You can't lose, the important stuff. People can't get your secrets, but it's beneficial enough to know what you know so you don't have to, you can just get, I think it's more of just, again, it's meant to explain why you can give it base commands and it will know what to do. But I like the idea that it's additive in second edition, right? You cast it, you get this cool thing that looks like you, but if you want it to do more, you have to do more to it. I think third edition had the best price, second edition had the best combo, and I think that's it. I think third and second edition, there could be a blend better. The XP was a great idea from third edition. I think that really sealed the deal on.
I will say I do kind of like what we were talking about combining being able to choose its level with how much experience you give it.
I think that would be just so fantastic, because
as well as giving it the ability to be as powerful as you.
Because realistically, if you're thinking about this, if the primary aspect of this spell is to create a look-alike, right? It's just a visual duplicate. You don't need that visual duplicate to be my level. It just needs to look like me. So why would I spend more to make the duplicate my level or half my level, whichever version you're using?
It just depends on what you do. Yeah.
If I just want it to look like me,
And
I
you're still
just
spending
needed
the 15,000.
I'm still spending the initiation cost, but if I don't need it to be powerful, if I just need it to look like me, I should be able to cast a level 1 version. Can you imagine like having a version that costs no XP, that's a level 0, it's basically a 1 HP NPC minion that looks like you? Mm-hmm. That would be fucking dope. Have that to where the base costs 1500 GP, all of the other stuff that's needed, but no XP cost, it's a 1 hit point identical copy of you. But once you start pumping in XP, then all of a sudden it can start doing shit. Big Energy, okay, I missed the XP bar, but hearing you say that, that's such a great way to do it. Gives you so much more flexibility. Yeah, exactly. So I think that would be, the idea from the XP is a 3.5. It required you to spend XP in accordance to how the level was of the caster, right? Or of the creature that you were duplicating. You had to actually put in XP in order to give it level. So I think that is the best part from 3.5 is the need to have XP. But yeah, and I think from second edition, having the 2 extra spells give it its extra abilities. I think that's super clutch as well. But yeah, why would I not need... Like, if I just want something to look like me for a while, like I said, like an assassination attempt, if I just want something, if I just need to, like an unseen servant to walk around the house and do stuff for me, I don't need it to defend my castle. Why does it need to be 7th level? Why can't it just be my 0 level 1 HP guy that, you know, it just is there for an alarm?
How do
for,
you
if anything.
feel about 5th edition giving the cap of you can only do 1?
I 100% agree with that and would assume that that was the intent all along. I don't ever think that this was intended to have multiples of.
Because imagine you had, because especially with the way we're describing it, like I would imagine I'm going to have my level 0 home Simulacrum that just takes care of the house.
Right.
That literally he's just
your butler.
He's just butler Kage. Like he's just in there doing whatever he's got to do. And then potentially I might have one that I keep in storage or whatever that I use for combat purposes. If I need him to, I don't know, something like that. But
yeah.
I can see possibilities.
I mean, the thing is like being able to do that though, having those clones of you and everything, it's like, at that point you are unstoppable because each one could be a kamikaze. Each one could, if you can make a bunch of 0 level 1 HP, but they all are holding a health potion and they're all just stacked around you.
Just like glue, 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 glue.
Or they're just handing them to you. They're just throwing them at you and just feeding you. Like again, what if I can have a bunch of them, right? So let's say if I'm rich enough to be able to have multiples, right? Then I'm rich enough to buy spell scrolls. So you're telling me I can make 10 of these guys and give them all fireball and say, hey, go walk 100 feet and all of you cast fireball. I'm gonna fucking leave now. Like. There's a problem with having a lot of these things that are under your command, which is why necromancy, they're always going to be zombies. This is like necromancy, but up to 100 because you get to have knowledge and be able to do shit. Zombies are just lifeless, and why they don't get to do much, right? Because you can have a million of them. Right. I wouldn't... Having a million Simulacrum would literally just break everything. That you bring
that up. We have a homebrew submission coming up, not next week, but the weekend after. The week after that is going to be a revamping of the Wizard Necromancy class, and it's meant to make it feel more summony.
Ooh, I like that.
So it's an interesting. I finished converting that one over, and it's pretty, I believe that one's Hecate.
So not next week, but the week after, maybe.
Yes. Pokeniners coming up this upcoming Monday.
Nice.
And then after that is going to be...
I'm excited for that. So here's another question that we're going to leave you with, because we are getting to the end of our stream today, but I'm going to leave you all with a fun thought. I've been trying to think of how I can do this. Like by the end of the episode, I want to come up with like a dynamic way to leave you all with something creative, right? It's fun to have the interaction and it's fun to keep it going, but I want to be able to send you guys off with stuff that's not just feeding us content. So here's what I'm going to leave you off with. We talked about Simulacrum and then the entire history. We've talked about the good and the bad of why you may want to have the limitation of at least one, or, you know, maybe everyone after that cost twice the cost.
Okay.
So can you imagine that? So the first one costs you 1,500 plus your XP plus whatever. But if you make another one, it's double. So it has to be 3,000 XP initial cost, twice the amount of XP per level, twice everything.
So is
twice the amount of ice.
Is that doubling every single time?
So if you want a third one, it's double the second one, not the first one. It's double the second one. So
it's 2, 4, 8, not 2, 4, 6.
Yes.
Okay.
It's not 2 extra each time. It's literally doubling each time. That would make it to where if you want simulacrums, that's fine. If you're a lich,
you're just gonna be around forever. You can slowly build yourself a little simulacrum army. But
actually, that. bro. So you know how? Oh my god. Out of curiosity, you know how you have to put a piece of you in it, right? You have to put a piece of you in Simulacrum.
Like DNA or something like that.
So we've talked about having the fun of like I know liches are only supposed to have one phylactery.
Yeah.
But can you imagine if you were able to have more than one and you made the Simulacrum and you took a phylactery and you put it inside the Simulacrum as your piece of you?
That would be very interesting. But then it'd be very dangerous. All they gotta do is hunt down your simulacrums, and then they got your phylactery.
Yeah. Oh, so Big Dungeon Energy also saw the Infinite Simulacrum TikTok too.
Oh, really?
And we've talked about that. Yeah. Very Horcruxy. But yeah, Simulacrum, you can't have more than one, even by 5th edition standards. And again, like it would just cost so much. And there's definitely problems with having Simulacrum have those abilities. But yeah, I'm going to leave you all with this because we've talked about the limitations of Simulacrum. But what's really interesting is depending upon your favorite, which we also want to know, leave a comment on, let us know which version is your favorite. But the thought to leave you guys with is if you can't have more than one from the same caster, what happens if multiple casters target the same creature and make different simulacrums of the same creature?
I mean, theoretically, there's nothing wrong with that.
So I'm going to leave y'all with that one to chew on for the weekend.
Okay.
What happens, like, just imagine what would happen in your realm if you had 10 wizards come up and all cast Simulacrum on a different creature, and that creature got 10. But remember, each wizard controls it individually, so there'd be a lot going on there. Oh, man. Necromancer raises a bunch of wizards, have them all cast Simulacrum on him. I'm going to leave you with that. We're going to be done for the rest of the day. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Big Dungeon Energy, it's been so awesome having you here. I do appreciate you showing up. We did see Pokeniner in here as well. Hoilepa showed up, which was really cool. So I do appreciate all of you. That's going to be us for the rest of the day. Yes, villain ideas. Have fun with that one. I really do like that. Lich raises wizards to cast Simulacrum on him. There you go.
That's crazy.
Enjoy that one for the rest of the weekend. We will be back on Monday with more homebrew to review. What is Monday's item?
Monday's item is Pokeniner's Sorcerer subclass.
Ooh, we have another subclass. We have a lot of subclasses, you guys. You got to get us some more spells and some more magic items, man. We've had nothing but subclasses.
I will say, coming up down the barrel, we have a weapon from Cosmic as well as a subrace from Pokeniner.
All right. Well, we will be there. Dungeon, I know that you will be streaming. I know if you guys haven't checked Big Dungeon Energy out, I forget how to do the shout outs very easily. But yeah, Big Dungeon Energy also streams. They might miss it next time. But hey, you know what? You can also catch us. There, does that work? Hey, look at that. But you can also catch us on YouTube. If you do miss it, Big Dungeon, you know that you can catch it on the VOD channel, which is now in the chat. And if you guys want to submit your own items to be reviewed on Mondays, or if you want to give us some topics to talk about, you can go ahead and post those in the Discord. And you can join our community, chat with everybody, give us ideas to talk about, or submit your homebrew for Mondays. Otherwise, yeah, that's going to be us for the rest of the weekend. I hope you all had a great week. I hope you have a great weekend ahead of you. And come and see us on Monday. We're going to have some fun on that one. But yeah, that's going to be us. Have a great weekend, guys. Cheers.
Deuces, my friends.